Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, March 10th, 2021, and we are here in the Freeport High School cafeteria. We have a full board this evening. Susanna is joining via the online Zoom, so we will do a quick roll call to make sure everyone can hear and be heard. Jeremy.
Present.
Candy.
Here.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Susanna.
Yes.
Angela.
Here.
Beth.
Yes.
Maura.
Here.
I'm here. Vali.
Yep.
Maddie.
Yes.
And Brady.
Here.
Great, thanks. All right. So we will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the February 24th, 2021 meeting as presented, barring any errors or omissions? Vali, Maddie, thank you. All right, we'll run through our vote one more time. Candy.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Jen. Yes. Susanna.
Yes.
Angela. Beth.
Yes.
Maura.
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali.
Yes.
Maddie.
Yes.
Brady.
Yes.
And Jeremy.
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, adjustments to the agenda.
We only have one. We are going to table the executive session. We're not quite ready to go there yet.
All right. Then we will move right on to the report from our board student rep, Brady.
All right, the high school's extended winter sports season ends tomorrow, and then spring sports will start right up at the end of March. So there's not a lot of turnover this year. The One Acts have their digital performance on March 19th and 20th. It's a virtual event, and tickets are free, but you have to request them ahead of the time if you want to watch it. Parent-teacher conferences are this week and next week, but it's balanced out by us kids not having school Friday, so it's not that bad. And then the class of 2022 is having Easter candy bag fundraisers. All orders must be in by March 15th.
Not that bad for you or for the teachers? Thank you, Brady. Okay, so we will move on to public comment. We can take it here in person in the cafeteria, or we can see if we have anyone joining. No one on the Zoom? No one's rushing the podium here in person? Okay, so as always, there is another public comment opportunity at the end of our agenda. But in the meantime, we will carry on. Report from the superintendent.
Thank you. I'll just start out with the COVID update. In RSU 5, we're now at 23 confirmed and 3 probable, for a total of 26 of our students having tested positive since September. With 7 staff members, we are now at a total of 33 total positive cases in RSU 5. Our most recent student case, we've had 2 positive cases in students in the past 14 days. And since my last superintendent's report to you, Freeport has moved from 215 cases to 232 cases. Durham's moved from 98 to 100, and Pownell remains the same between 20 and 49, as does South Freeport between 6 and 19. I did want to give a brief vaccine update. Our staff have begun receiving their vaccinations. Both Mid-Coast and Southern Maine Healthcare in Sanford are currently partnering with us and vaccinating our staff that are over 60. Pharmacies are now vaccinating all school staff. So we hope that even by the end of March that the majority of our staff will have received the vaccine. There have also been other restrictions that have loosened at the state level around gatherings. So we have begun discussions about graduation and other senior activities. And currently, the high school is soliciting feedback from both the students and parents. On March 15th, I'm happy to report, with the exception of our remote students, we will have our pre-K to 5 students back to 5 days a week of in-person learning. At the end of my update today, you will hear from Principals Grogan and Pidden about our plans to move middle school students back to 5 days a week in-person learning beginning March 22nd and 23rd. And, you know, I want to continue to assure the board that since September the 8th, we continue to brainstorm ways to get all of our students back to 5 days a week learning. The high school administration is now reviewing the logistics of bringing all of our high school students back to 5 days a week learning, and I'm in the hopes that by next week that we'll be able to provide you more of these details around the logistics. Currently, we have about 13% of our high schoolers that are back to 5 days a week. And then when we've finally achieved the goal of having all of our students back to 5 days a week, we're going to be fine with just keeping the status quo for the remainder of the year. I am really in awe and proud of our staff at the outstanding job that they've done this year with their flexibility and willing to continue to switch plans and revise plans until, you know, we have all of our students back. Equity, tomorrow is our professional learning day. All staff district-wide have signed up.
Friday, right? Not tomorrow.
Oh, I think I was eager for the end of the week because of the weather. I think the weather's supposed to finally warm up. Thank you. Friday is our professional learning day. All staff district-wide have signed up for one of the 4 sessions on equity that will be offered throughout the day. This will allow all of our staff to share some common understanding of the equity work. This will be facilitated by Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium that is working with us this year and next. And they'll do an overview of the audit, and then the remainder of the time will be, you know, discussions and examining our own kind of beliefs and unconscious biases. So we're all looking forward to doing that work on Friday. We also had our district-wide DEI committee meeting yesterday, and we discussed ways to do frequent check-ins with the community and also ways to share about the equity work that's been taking place throughout this year. On Monday evening, we had our meeting with the Cultural Competence Institute, which consists of, I think, about 300 educators across the state. This month's meeting was focused on the impact of COVID on all of our families. There was discussion around the increased truancy that a lot of the districts are dealing with and the stress that our families and students are feeling. And then just an example of some of the equity work that's going on in the schools. This is but one example. At Mass Landing, there will be a new welcome message at the school. The civil rights team will be relocating the Choose Kindness banner that is currently in the front lobby to the cafeteria. And then they're going to be using the 3 windowed cases to artistically express the importance of feeling welcomed and valued, as well as increasing tolerance based on people's race and skin color, national origin, religion, disabilities, gender, or sexual orientation. The civil rights team will then be recording a video to share with each classroom at Mass Landing about why they did this work, what it means, and what the students and staff can do to respect, honor, and live by this message. And that's but one example of the many things that are happening at the building levels. And now for you to hear more about the great news and how we're going to get to green at the middle level, I'm going to turn it over to Principal Pidden. And in your packet, if you look for the blue sheet, that says moving middle schools in RSU 5 to green. It probably should have been on green, right? But he will talk about Durham Community School, and then Principal Grogan will talk about Freeport Middle School. And also attached to your packet is the current school calendar, because this does have some calendar implications just for Freeport Middle School, so it's just there for your reference. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Becky. So I think you can see, if you have the chart right in front of you, then I'll just sort of summarize those categories. I won't necessarily read it all to you, but I'm happy to go into whatever detail I can share. So the process we've used, I guess I should back up and just say, at this point, we now have all pre-K 5 students attending 5 days. This is week 2 for 3rd and 4th graders, and starting to get into a bit of a rhythm and start to create some norms and routines around the structure we now have. So we're still a little bit of evolving to do, but it'll get smoother and smoother as we go along, and it's really already pretty smooth. So we're delighted to have that many students in. We are planning on getting the students from 6th through 8th grade all in beginning the week of March 22nd. So that's our new target. I think last time I was here I'd mentioned to you by April. So we had transportation is obviously one factor, spacing is a factor, movement around the building is a factor. You know, they're all sort of looked at simultaneously, but as their own unique strands. For transportation, we surveyed families to get another check-in on who is able to provide transport for students, who is dependent on the buses. The bus numbers will obviously be a little higher than they are now. But just to give you a sense, we have about an additional 40 students from each section. So in theory, it's only like an additional 44 students a day that this will impact. So it's not a massive number as a percentage of our school. I mean, in total, it was like 80 students who are still in a hybrid. But it will have an impact. So we have the transportation piece, which we think is going to be manageable. We are working on the pickup and drop-off. Pickup in the afternoons is going a lot smoother. In the mornings, it's a little challenging because cars pull in and then they wait until they can drop off. And increasingly, we have a number of cars who arrive quite early so they can be the first to depart because they've got to get to work. The challenge of that has been in terms of dropping students off and us being able to congregate them. We're working on a plan right now where we have extended, we've offered to some of our support staff, they'd be willing to work an additional 15 to 30 minutes a day to help us with staging, like a first group drop off and then a second group drop off. So that is the model we're defining right now, which I think will be, it will be in place. Whether I think it will or not, it will be. The classrooms, the class range we are facing will be 14 to 17 students in a classroom. We can do this with 3-foot spacing. One of the pieces I would just bring you back to, we discussed back in August when we were first talking about numbers and capacity to go green. We had placed a lot of emphasis upon trying to really make sure the learning matched our district commitment to our learning models with workshop model, and the restrictions that having more people in the classroom simultaneously would put upon the teaching and learning model. Our point now with 3 months of school to go is that our emphasis is we can compromise a little on the teaching and learning model because we now have to really emphasize the social emotional well-being and getting kids in. So, it does have an impact, but it's a manageable impact, and the payoff is the right payoff at this point in time. So numbers will be 14 to 17. What we're anticipating, you heard Dr. Foley just say that Friday, our PD day, in the morning we have the district diversity and equity and inclusion work, followed by our school-based DI work. And then in the afternoon, our team for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, along with our custodial team, are going to have all the classrooms set up, ready to go in terms of this is how they're going to be formatted with furniture. We've borrowed a number of individual desks from Moore Street and Freeport Middle School. Then our plan is next week, students will still be in hybrid, but they will be in the classroom set up as it will be. So we will start working with them around new sort of lineup routines or dismissal routines from the classroom from what they've been used to. So they've gone through that structure, a week of kind of walkthroughs before the following week when the increased numbers are in the rooms. Team of teachers has worked on transitions, how kids will line up, how they will move from room to room. And sort of, if you're going from this room to this room, this is where you go, this is where you line up type thing. Lunch and breakfast program, we established that at the beginning of the year to accommodate everybody. So that system is already in place. The kitchen staff will be preparing, more food, and that's something that Erin has indicated she can accommodate. We have hired an additional phys ed teacher to fill that role through the year. So we needed to create the smaller classes because usually in our specials classes, that's where it's a little bigger because we would group them differently. So we've added in a 6th special until the end of the year to accommodate smaller size classes there, which is still in the 17 per student range. And an extra ed tech to support lunch duties. It's not just for this group, but across the grade levels because we have half our children eat in the classroom and half eat in the cafeteria during a lunch period. And then, as I say, there'll be some prep work Friday afternoon, and then we hope to welcome students back on Monday the 22nd. Any questions? Sure.
Just, is there a limit on the number on the bus?
That is a question that Dr. Foley and Dennis have been researching with the state and the DOE, and it seems at this point that we can accommodate the number we have. And I know that Dr. Foley's planning on meeting with the drivers, I believe, on some point on Friday also to review that with them.
Okay, thank you.
So the way that works on the bus is that you're only limited by what you're limited by the executive order. And so previously, I haven't even reflected on this with the new order, the new limitations, but we would be limited by 50 because that's previously what we could put in a room. And then the rest of it is recommendations that, they prefer you have 4 windows open because if somebody has to quarantine, then you don't have to quarantine the whole bus, you can do half the bus. So there are recommendations that then go along with that, but I think we're going to be able to easily accommodate the students that are riding the bus.
Thank you.
Vali?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank you for all the work that you guys have done with your staff, and this is a great plan for families, and hopefully teachers are comfortable with the plan too. I assume they are. So I'm just really thankful that you guys are doing this.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, we're excited. I think we've all talked about it here so many times. It's awful to think that it's a year, basically this Friday, since we had a PD day, and all of a sudden we're not coming back. That we have still, 80 students who have not been to school 5 days a week, 12 months later. At first it was for 2 weeks, right? And how quickly time flies. So we're excited to have them back too. Thank you. What's that?
Thanks.
Yep.
Ray Grogan, Freeport Middle School. So the middle school plan is definitely quite a bit different than what we're doing right now. And it was really the way we felt that we could do it safest for our kids and our staff members. Currently, in any given time, our students are divided between 16 different teachers, and the group of teachers that are not teaching, that's their prep, and they kind of rotate through that. So every teacher has a prep during the school day. What we're recommending here is giving every teacher in the building their prep from 120 to 220, and then every single classroom and every single teacher will be teaching every single period they're with us. We had to move all the books out of our book room to create additional classroom space. There's with that, it does involve having multiple teachers need to teach new subjects or new content areas, because we wanted to make sure we were teaching math and language arts every day at every grade level, and we don't have enough language arts and math teachers to do that. Everyone who is teaching, who will be teaching language arts and math for us, has at one point in time before in their career in Freeport Middle School taught math or language arts. But we had to kind of dig a little bit back to get them to come and do that. It involves the Unified Arts team being placed at different places in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teams and rotating through with that team there. On each grade level team, there will be 2 teams. So within each grade, there'll be 2 teams of 4 teacher teams, and they'll rotate through those teachers. The teams on each grade level will change their classes about 4 minutes apart. So we're actually thinking in between classes, we will have less kids in the hall with this plan than we currently do, because we currently change all of our kids at the same time. And with the number of A-day and 5-day kids, that's more than half. Or the number of B in 5-day, that's more than half. So we're looking at that will be actually less kids in the hallway for us. The one major issue is lunch. We ate outside until Thanksgiving last year, and we plan on getting outside as quick as we can again. And when it's nice out, or somewhat nice out, we will be outside and eating, and that makes lunch really easy for us. Until then, or on rainy days, we will use the cafeteria, the library, and half of the gym to make that work, just to kind of rotate different groups there through, because we really wanted to make it a priority not to bump into the band room. Anyone that knows the structure of our building, it's really easy to expand the cafeteria into the band room, but we really wanted to avoid that. With that, all the kids are going to get new schedules. Everyone will have at least 2 of the teachers they had before. Most will have all 4 teachers they've had before. And then the other big part is this is such a big change for a lot of our teachers, new teaching teams, new content, building 300 new schedules. We really do need the 2 days to regroup and plan on it, because we don't have every detail for the kids to walk through the door done yet. We're not there. We're definitely building the plane as we're on the runway here. But we do feel confident that on the 23rd with 2 PLD days, we'll be ready for 300 kids to walk in the door. Questions?
Polly.
Thank you, Ray. Very creative thinking too there. I wanted to find out the 1 hour early release. Is that a factor of transportation, or is it because you need all the teachers to be teaching all of the time? So they need
so
that
I
hour?
went to Becky and Dennis and requested that, because the number of teachers I had is 16, and if you divide our kids by 16 places, that means we have 18 or 19 in the classroom. And with hiring an additional teacher and getting the Unified Arts teachers in the mix and some other staff members that we've had to pull in different ways, that we're getting that divisible number to 24. So we're allowed to, because we can't fit, 16, 17 in classrooms under the current state rules. We're hoping that, current state rules will change. But so we really needed to get that number of teachers instructing every single period increase. That was the only way we saw or the best way we saw possible to make this work.
So if the state were to relax the guidelines for distancing, then would you alter the plan slightly to go back to normal existence?
I'm not sure. I mean, that would be an interesting question on, I guess it'd be at what point in time they do it, because it's a huge change. And then to up and change everything again
Right.
would be, it's been a pretty monumental lift this last month to put this together. And going back and putting it back in place isn't as easy as just putting it back in place.
Right, so the way you're presenting it to staff and families is this is the plan through the end of the year,
'Cause, I mean,
regardless of what happens.
I
with
haven't
the
heard
state.
anyone anticipating the state's going to change the 3 feet guidelines.
Okay.
And I will add that we've pushed on that at our Cumberland County Superintendent's meeting where we have DOE reps there. And they're indicating that that is not going to be loosened up, before the end of this school year. And they're even questioning whether it will be in September, but we're more hopeful about September. I really don't get any feel that that would be loosened up before the end of this year, which is why we kind of made this plan.
So even with all staff vaccinated in all districts, they're not comfortable changing the guideline? Because I was going to suggest actually that we write a letter or something saying, hey, if we have everyone vaccinated, would you consider relaxing the distancing rules?
Well, we're definitely pushing on, or
Okay.
I should say I'm pushing on the distancing rule, even if they just went to 2 feet.
Right.
But the vaccines, I know that's a message that's kind of out there, but the vaccines are not correlated to the distancing, according to them.
Did they explain why?
Well, because our kids aren't going to be vaccinated.
No, I understand that, but
That's
even
their
then-
explanation.
Okay. Well, thank you for asking the question.
Yeah. No, I'm.
And thank you for pushing.
So can you remind me what unified arts teaches?
Specials.
Oh, okay, specials,
Yeah.
perfect, sorry.
We just like to speak a little different language than the rest of the district.
Fancy words, got it. Beth?
Just because there was some concern about pulling arts teachers and things and teaching things that they weren't supposed to do, I'm just curious how much is that
No one
happening? Or are
is
they,
teaching something they're not certified to do.
right,
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about that. I expect
We're
that
still
you would
offering
handle that.
art and
is what I should
music
say.
and
So there's still, all of the specials teachers or the unified arts teachers are going to be teaching their unified arts in addition.
almost all of them. Laura is teaching art to the 6th grade. Darren is going to be doing health and wellness to the 8th grade. Then we're going to have the world languages in the 7th grade. Jonah Chase, our other wellness teacher, is going to be teaching math for us. She has taught math for us. She started the year as a math teacher for us when we needed a long-term sub. She taught math at Mass Landing. So she is like one of the people that is making a pretty big change.
Yeah, that's,
But it's
I
something
mean, and
she's
that's
done before.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I guess I'm just concerned that, so you're still offering all of the specials, it's just that they're like channeled more instead of everybody getting everything at the same time, or not at the same time, but.
So everyone will everyone will have the 4-period day. Everyone will have math and language arts. Depending on which team you have, you might have social studies and science. You might have STEM and art. You might have STEM and health, phys ed. We are planning on switching the health and the phys ed and the art about halfway through. When the 30s project starts, we're going to move Laura into the 8th grade team so that the art can become part of the 30s project. So there are some things where they'll get more than one, but some kids may have a schedule that is math, language arts, social studies, and STEM. Those might be their 2 specials.
Okay, I guess I was more concerned, I guess, I'm probably not making myself clear, but I guess I was more concerned about what the teachers like Erin, is she still teaching band? Like, is she still,
Yep. So Erin,
there's still going to be band
absolutely.
offered
No,
and
good
things
question.
like that?
I didn't
Okay.
understand what you were saying. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So like Erin is still doing band. She will do pull-out lessons during the day, like she does with her small groups, and then she is hoping to have some bigger ensembles during the Falcon period. We have not eliminated what your kids knew as BCS, we now call Falcon. We have not eliminated that from our schedule, so Aaron and Nate will still be able to have their groups to finish the day.
Okay, thank you so
Yep.
much.
Jen?
I just want to say with so much out there, like so many people I know that work in education in other districts that are just kind of status quo and have been doing the same thing since day one and don't really plan to make a lot of changes by the end of the school year. I just think it's amazing that with 3 months left of school that this much work has been put in to bring these kids back. And I just think it's a huge testament to the commitment to the kids in this district, and just really appreciate it. And I know the families are, I'm sure, ecstatic about it as well.
And I appreciate you saying that. And I think that for us, we really saw like September, October, November, December, the kids getting a lot better with the online learning and really doing. After the Christmas holiday, we really saw a big drop with the middle school kids, with the level they were participating, the work they were doing, and that's when we really started, seeing the change in the kids. And the one thing I've talked to the staff about is our biggest reason for bringing these kids back is the social, emotional, and support of the kids. The content will come because obviously we're teaching more, but that's not the big concern on why we're doing this. It's to get the kids back in the building on the social, emotional side.
Lindsay?
Just to echo what Jen said, amazing work. I talked to a friend up in Brunswick today. He is raising 2 children on his own. He's shattered, and there's no plans to do anything different. So well done, and the families, the kids, just huge. Thank you.
Yeah, I think from the beginning, we pushed as hard as we could at the beginning to get his kids back as many days as we could then. And, none of it is easy. None of these ways are easy, regardless of what model you're in, fully remote, fully in, fully out. I mean, none of this is easy, but, the easier way out of not trying to change and not trying to get more kids back, you can understand why people don't want to take that on in the midst of everything else going on. So, I mean, huge respect for the whole team that was willing, and, starting with Becky, constantly asking, what more can we do? What more can we do? And never being happy with the status quo until we have all of our kids back safely. So thanks. Maddie?
I also want to acknowledge that both you and Will talked about the social and emotional wellness being the priority, which I certainly appreciate, and I'm sure the teachers do as well. There's so much focus. We hear so much about loss of learning, which of course is a genuine concern. But with you prioritizing social and emotional wellness of kids, I think that also puts the emphasis on the emotional wellness of our teachers. And it's probably, although this has got to be incredibly challenging, I'm so grateful to them for the work that they're partnering with you on. I'm sure it feels like a little less onerous with that focus.
Molly?
Yeah, I would like to echo that. I got another call from another board member in a relatively close district also asking how you're doing it. How is your team able to do what they're doing? So thank you. I know you're turning every rock. No one else.
No, I mean, we all have our
seems to
kids
be,
in this district, and I think we all are very lucky at what we have.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask Becky, if you feel that a letter from the board supporting your position to DHHS and CDC, trying to reduce the distancing guidelines will help, please let us know, because, I mean, speaking for myself, I would be more than happy to participate in such an exercise, if it's helpful.
Well, it couldn't hurt, so. Sometimes I go with that, like, is it going to do any harm? Is it going to move in a different direction? You just don't know, and so that would be great, I think, if the board would write a letter around that.
Great, well, maybe
Are you
Michelle
volunteering
can-
to write the letter?
I'm happy to write the letter if
Draft
people are
that.
interested in having the letter written.
Yeah, so what are the thoughts? Is there anybody who, feels that we probably shouldn't consider writing that letter? Oops, Susanna.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for Ray and Will, your work and the full team. But just a question on that. I do have, I mean, I realize that staff is getting vaccinated, but nobody under the age of 18 at the moment. And so I guess I am a little bit hesitant that if the distancing is protecting students, that eradicating that might not be in our favor. But I guess I'm just sort of hesitant about whether that's a direction that I'm comfortable going. And I had another thing I wanted to say before that came up, and I don't remember what it is. So I may ask a question again in a moment.
Maura, I think you asked the question about after school. Just so you know, so the public library currently is not open. So that's not an option for some of our kids at 120. In talking to Peter Wagner Community Programs, you know, just like all of us, it is really hard to find staff members. They're going to offer some of their teen tech programs into smaller groups and some things, but nothing that's like, this is an after school program 5 days a week with that. You know, one of the things we will be doing is offering some homework club and some different supports after school, because you know, we can still get the kids home on the high school bus at 2:20. So you know, we will be offering to some kids to stay later, but there really isn't, primarily for talking to Peter, the staffing to be able to pull something like that off for you know, for 3 months.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah.
Other questions for Ray or thoughts on a letter? Let's start with questions for Ray, so we can let him sit if we. Thank you.
So I will get a nice communication out to our parents probably before you leave. And thank you very much.
Maddie?
I'm not sure what I think about this letter. I feel like we've been so careful and we've been so lucky. I mean, 33 cases, when you compare that to the district over there that was in the paper today that have had 70, I think. I don't know what's happening differently. I don't know if that's mostly community spread, if it's just a really different sort of community. I am feeling a little hesitant. I guess that's all I have to say.
Jen?
I agree, Maddie, with, you know, there's stuff going on in other communities. Not sure where that's coming from either, but for me, I would feel comfortable with the letter because I think that it's the only way that we have any chance of getting our high schoolers back this year. And I think that we have done such a good job, and I feel like even if the distance was reduced, I feel like we would continue to do a really good job. So I'd be in favor of the letter.
So I would want the letter to be proposing that it be reduced before September, more than before the end of the year. And believe me, Principal Gulko and I have been in a lot of conversations, and we are committed to getting our high school students back before the end of the year. And that message has been going out to staff, and it really is logistics and not the 3 feet. So it'll be a very creative plan whenever we get it all figured out. that will probably be more similar to Ray's than some of the other plans. But when they signaled that they weren't sure that the 3 feet would be reduced to 2 by September, that's what I'm pushing back on, because you know, by then the vaccine should be down to, you know, at least students that are 16 and older. And there is, with every case we have, I probe as much as I can, and you know, without making the nurses ask the families, you know, about how do you think your child got it, or how do we think our staff members got it. And there hasn't been one time where we think that they have contracted COVID in school, and we don't have any evidence that it's being transmitted during school. So I just feel like with the mask wearing and the hand washing, that in order for all of our kids throughout the state to be able to return to 5 days a week learning, that I feel that is so critical for our students' social, emotional well-being and academic by then. You know, if we continue with this into September, I just feel like it's so harmful to our students. So I really understand why it's probably not going to be loosened up. I think one of the things that our state has done really well is to proceed cautiously, and I think that's why our state is doing very well. And so I would not want it to be, you know, they're loosening up other things, and I understand that, but by September, I think it's just critical for them to lessen those physical distancing guidelines.
So with that feedback, does that help any of the concerns that folks have? Yeah? I don't know, I can't see Susanna. Susanna.
Thank you, and thank you for that. I think I'm still hesitant on the fact that that's assuming, I guess I'm uncomfortable now predicting what life is going to be like in 6 months, because ideally having everybody 16 and over vaccinated is great if that actually happens, and making sure that we get sufficient people, and there are people who are rejecting vaccinations, and still just looking at transmission among students and where that is, and people who might be traveling more over the summer, and just some talks about what that might want to be like. And I feel that I'd be happy with a lower distance, lesser distance if sort of transmission is improved. But if it's not, I'm not comfortable pushing a shorter distance.
Lindsay.
I think I completely agree with what Becky said. I think I am uncomfortable with trying to change it with 3 months to go. However, for September, I think it's critical, and I think the mental health, the social emotional well-being of our young people outweighs any risk of transmission. And just like Becky just said, I don't see that it's been transmitted in the schools. I think every case I've probed about has been, they're outside school, that's where they're getting it. And as a parent, I just, the social emotional consequences of this thing, of what we have asked our young people to bear to protect the olders is really, it's incredible when you think about it. When history reflects on this, what has been asked of our young people. I mean, Maine has been so cautious, but other states, you know, bars and restaurants and this, and our kids sit idly. So I am absolutely in favor of pushing for a letter for September. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Brady.
I feel like if we're pushing for a letter for like September, this feels like something we should be talking about like in the summer and not now, and like kind of like see how things go and then like attack it then. Because like right now, like someone said, it's really hard to address what it's going to be like then, because we have no idea what it's going to look like until later on.
So that's an idea. I mean, is it something that we table for a month or so to see how some of these transitions go, and then, you know, revisit before we generally don't meet in the summer, Brady? You'll be happy to know. But maybe before we break for the summer, an idea. We did last year just because we didn't have a budget until July, but and then we had a reopening thing to figure out. But usually we don't. But that's an idea too. Do we want to wait? I mean, I think there's things to be said on both sides. I mean, knowing more is always helpful, right? I mean, if we wrote letters 2 months ago, not knowing what was going on today, I think we might change what those letters said. But I think it's also important to think about that it takes time for things to change. And, you know, we'd hate to give them something and they go, geez, wish we had this a little while ago. We might have been able to get some stuff figured out. So, Maddie.
I was thinking when Susanna was talking that that we could write the letter in such a way that it says, presuming that cases in Maine continue to decline and number of vaccinations remain steady or better than expected as they have been over the last couple of weeks, then we would advocate for this. And I think when it comes to advocacy, getting our voice out there sooner rather than later would help.
Polly.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that based on the data that Becky sent to all of us in terms of the age groups and who's getting hospitalized, who's dying, I mean, if you look at the age groups who will not be vaccinated, who are the students, the incidence is very low, and the incidence for the students or that age group who would actually have a severe case are super low. On the other hand, we're seeing that every student is seeing the impact of not being socially connected and engaged. So I've been super careful about no risk that's unnecessary, but in this case, the incidence is so low of the severe cases and the impact is so widespread for everybody else that when I just put it on balance, I mean, I can only fall on the side that says relaxing the rule is actually better for the entire community in our school. Even though there will be a case here and there, yeah, we can't avoid everything, but we can avoid the majority of the impact on the majority of the students.
And I think, you know, back to what we were talking about earlier and all the work this district has done to get the kids back, unfortunately, that's not the case across the state. So if they don't change those numbers, there will continue to be schools and districts that don't bring their kids back. And, you know, selfishly, I worry about our kids first, but I do worry about all the kids in this state. And, you know, if they don't change those rules, I mean, it's going to be huge and not in a good way. Susanna.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering about whether writing something in a conditional format. So I think writing something now where we can get our voice out there and we can, as it's been said, that things do take time. If we can write something in a way that says, you know, if the following conditions, whatever they may be, are met, we'd support this. And maybe there's a way to do that as well with looking around the state and maybe trying to provide some incentive for other districts with, you know, if these following conditions are met, we can bring more students back, have closer connections, et cetera. And maybe there's opportunities to do that, not just as a state regulation, but similarly to how we had the green, orange, and red, green, yellow, and red system this year. Having, you know, if schools meet the condition to be green, they can have, you know, reduced distancing as well, which might enable or support schools that have done really well in COVID prevention, and then incentivize schools that haven't done quite as well at the same time. But I would be supportive of writing a letter if it's conditional based on continued improvement. I just am not comfortable right now saying we need this in September if we don't really have a clear idea of what September may be.
Okay. Angela.
I agree with Brady. I think this is a little early. We're just starting something new right now, and we'd be able to use our experience as an example of look, things are fine, and we've opened things up more, instead of just having a conditional letter. You know, that's my thought.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of waiting a little bit longer. We still don't have much data in on the long-term impacts of kids and adults in terms of the long haulers. So I'd like to know a little more before we jump into a letter.
Okay, so now we're moving up on sort of a 50-50 here. Valerie.
I mean, having heard that the high school will have a plan for coming back, for bringing back all the students, regardless of the letter, then I'm comfortable waiting and writing it later. What I'm not really comfortable doing is prescribing at what point the state ought to relax the rules. I'm more comfortable writing a more general letter that provides general conditions but not describe any particular or definite situation at which point certain districts would be able to relax and others wouldn't. So I don't know how other people feel about it, but I think simpler is better, just a simple, direct message with some preconditions, but not necessarily get into the minutiae of at what point necessarily any one district can change from 3 to 2 or 3 to 1 or whatever it may be.
Yeah. I think maybe that the idea behind that was just, we would be open to a system like that, not saying what the system would be, but, throwing it out there as an idea for them to consider. Jen?
I agree with Volley. I mean, I think we agreed previously, so I'm fine with waiting a little bit as well, but in agreement with Volley that it should be just kind of a general request.
Okay. So maybe we look, we put this aside for a month or so and revisit in April. We'll have some info from the middle schools going back, and at that point maybe we have a plan on what the high school looks like, and we're sort of better equipped to write the letter. Everybody okay with that idea? Revisit them? Great, thanks. Do you remember where we are?
I think we're to the budget.
I think we are.
I do want to just remind everybody, I think Pownell has been back since, is it October, Lisa? Where are you, Lisa? It's October 26th, 5 days a week, and I think they've had the least amount of cases in the district. So kudos to Pownell. They're doing a great job out there. All of our schools are doing a great job. It's not a competition. I have to catch myself. Yeah. And now we're going to have like a brief break to get the PowerPoint going. And so in front of you board members, you have 3 new updated sheets. You could take a moment to start kind of just looking at those. 2 are on pink, 1's on yellow, and we will be probably ready to roll in maybe a minute or 2. Gail, I may need some help over here too. Are we ready?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. All right, we ready?
Okay, here we go. So I know that you saw this in January, but I'm just going to do a brief recap before you begin your deliberations. We are focused on, in this year's budget, on 3 of our 4 strategic goals. Our enrollment took a decline this year with COVID, but our best guess is that we will recoup that loss and be at an all-time high next year. We feel like we're trending upwards at the elementary. High school is definitely on an upwards trend, and we feel like next year at the middle level that it will be kind of just flat enrollment. Our class sizes with this budget that we're presenting tonight will remain between 13 and 22. A reminder that our focus areas for this year are maintaining the class sizes, our equity work, an increase in student support, and we have a need to increase support in our finance office. We are also requesting more support, if you remember, for Pownell Elementary in math. We're requesting a .2 RTI math teacher, and this will separate the math and literacy support, and it'll allow Pownell Elementary to have 4 RTI math groups rather than 2. We have a need for another additional grade 2 Moore Street School teacher, and that's due to enrollment. Last year, in concept, you supported the addition of a .5 guidance counselor at Durham Community School, but when we were trying to reduce the budget impact, we moved this into one of the grants, and we now need to move it back into our regular budget. Both at Freeport High School and Durham Community School, we're requesting additional staffing for student support. At Freeport High School, the addition of 1/10 of a position will allow us this position to become a full-time support position, thereby attracting, we feel like, better candidates. At Durham Community School, when Principal Pidden presented, you remember that he is basically taking one of his literacy ed techs and turning that into a teaching position. We feel that we need an additional tech person because we've added a substantial amount of equipment since the pandemic and need more support to maintain the equipment while also supporting our staff. We've been talking about the academic and social emotional toll that the pandemic has taken on our students, so we are requesting additional money for our summer learning, and we are still working out the logistics of what that would look like. We are also requesting an additional bus driver custodian. This will help in both areas for keeping our buildings clean and having a driver for extracurricular activities. We have discussed this, as you remember, almost every year, and this was the #1 request by our administrators when we were brainstorming needs for next year. In our finance office, we need additional support, and we're wanting to move the accounts payable position to a full-time position. We also are in the midst already of training to move from our Encode software to Infinite Visions. And then this budget also establishes a reserve account for the tennis courts. Our equity work, as you know, we entered into an agreement this year that was a 2-year agreement. Part of that was funded in the current year's budget. The other part is funded in next year's budget. It also funds stipends to have civil rights teams in every school, and at Durham Community School, there will be 2 stipends. If you remember that 2 of the 3 stipends were requested last year, but cut when we reduced the budget. And so those are back in the budget with the swim coach and the STEM club. And then we have a new stipend, which is a technical director for the drama club at Freeport Middle School. We did reallocate in lines where we could. We have debt service dollars that are being reduced because of the payoff of the loan at the Freeport Middle School, and also we have reduction on the interest payments. This is a new update tonight that you did not previously see. We heard about our property and casualty insurance, that it's going to go up somewhere. It's still an estimate. Is going to go up somewhere between 18 and 24%. And so we have had to make an adjustment to the paperwork that you have in front of you. And those are the numbers that we're estimating that our insurance is going to increase by. In auto insurance, $3,673, and property and casualty, $8,616. This now results in an increase of our expenditures from our previous number that we had shared of a 2.16% to now a 2.19%. And this is in here because I just love the photo, and we do hope that this budget ensures that all of our students will have a pathway to success. On this page, this is a comparison of this year's budget that has been approved to our proposed budget. This is also page 11 in your pink packet that you have in front of you. This next slide is new learning for tonight. We have the tax impact. Rick has figured that out, and it shows to be in Durham. Again, you see that the estimated is underlined. We can never, and bolded. And so we think that it will be around 3.10% for Durham, 2.86% for Freeport, and 2.50% for Pownell. You can see how this compares in this slide to the last several years. It is the lowest expenditure increase that we've requested in the past at least 6 years. For those who prefer the graph, here's the graph form. And then, you know, the drivers of the increase, it's really everything that we've just gone through. Other than, I think on this slide, if we just did our estimated salary and benefit increases, that would increase our budget by 2.5% in expenditures. What we still don't know is exactly where Region 10 is going to come in. We currently have a 15% increase budgeted. We're still just at the beginning phases of our teacher contract negotiations, and we still don't know exactly what our MLTI funding looks like. This next slide is, there are quite a few changes on this, and this is really what we're proposing going forward. Previously, pre-COVID times, we've done a lot of Q&As before the board meetings from 6 to 6:30. Because of our Zoom board meetings now, we're recommending that we just kind of embed those into our regular budget meetings. And of course, for anyone who doesn't like to participate in a Zoom meeting or to have to go up to the mic, I understand that. We really are always very willing to meet at the central office. You can call Rick, our Director of Finance. He's happy to answer any questions, but we just feel like this makes more sense during these times to just embed it into our board meetings. The other thing that you see there on May 26th, that we have heard from the state, and it will be just like last year, that we are not required to do an annual budget meeting, and that instead we just do the budget validation referendum on June 8th. And so I'm proposing that and recommending that, because of what we don't know and what the guidelines are going to be, that we continue as we did it last year for one more year, and then hopefully next year we'll be back to our regular annual budget meeting. And we hope, we're always trying to strengthen RSU 5, and we believe that this budget does that. And we have our awesome administrative team here to answer any questions that you might have as you deliberate on the budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. So in terms of process around the annual budget meeting, I mean, last year we couldn't have it because of the rules that were in place. This year, it's potentially you could have it, but you don't have to have it based on what them extending that option. Do we have to vote one way or the other, or?
Vote as a board?
Yep.
Well, I think even last year, you know, I think there were places in the state that found a way to do it. So I just want to clarify that I think even last year we could have, you know, if you figure out how to have overflow rooms and do all the technology.
Okay.
I think.
Did we vote last year then?
I don't remember voting last year. No, I think you just.
There's a lot of last year I don't recall from this time.
And so I just think it would be important for you I don't think you need a formal vote, but I think that just like the letter we just discussed, I think there needs to be discussion around it.
Yep.
About which way you would prefer to do it.
Okay. Bali.
So I've always been an advocate for having public involvement, but in this case, I think we're going to spend a lot of time and resources setting this thing up, and no one will show up. Because people are not going to want to go into a room without knowing exactly how many people are going to be in the room and the layout, and I'm comfortable just skipping it this year.
I agree. I think my preference is to maintain, you know, the referendum vote. I mean, there is public, you know, the ultimate public input is the vote up or down on the budget. So I would be comfortable with that method this year too. Maddie.
I think I'm comfortable with that as well. I'm wondering if do we need to decide this tonight, or could we potentially put something out, you know, communicate something and say that this is the way we're going, and solicit feedback? If you feel strongly one way or the other, let us know.
Sounds like a survey, Maddie.
No, I mean Facebook. I mean Facebook, and I guess you're already coming up in the forecaster, so it's too late for that. But you know, or even in the announcements, in the school announcements. Although it needs to go out to the wider community, because we certainly hear from more than just parents about
at the budget. So one thing that would be required, again, just like it was last year, is we would have to have a public hearing on the budget. So so that would be a piece that we had to do. The difference between the public hearing, which we could do just like we're doing this meeting and having the Zoom option, is that people couldn't adjust the adopted budget up or down like they can at the annual budget meeting. But they could certainly, you know, express their opinions one way or the other, ask questions, clarify whatever they wanted to do. So there would be that forum, just not the ability to change it. So.
Well, and basically our next board meeting on the 17th is for like public input and deliberations. Or are you thinking of something more than that?
I think it has to be legally something more than that. Like last year I had to read a thing that says I'm opening the public hearing, yada, 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 yada. it was embedded into a board meeting, but it is a very, I think, specific legal thing that we'd have to do if we were to opt out of the annual budget meeting.
Yeah, and it needs to be advertised with a certain number of days
and-
ahead and in certain places. So,
Yeah.
so I had a question about Maddie's suggestion. If we ask people, do you want to have it or do you not want to have the annual budget meeting? If we only hear from 5 people and they all want one
Right.
thing or another, then
What do we do with that?
information?
Yeah, that's the struggle. Beth.
What is the capacity at the high school gym at the moment with the guidelines in place? I mean, is it like under 50 or?
No.
No.
Well, by the end of May, we should be at 75% of indoor capacity. But the question is that 75% plus everybody needs to be 6 feet apart? So 75% is probably 700 people in the gym, right? Something like that. I don't know. Dennis may know that number, or Jen may know that number.
Dennis, do you know what the gym is?
Right.
1,200.
So 800 would be the capacity.
Just, thinking about the amount of people that show up and, even in a typical year, how many people show up? Do we have more than like 50? I mean, I don't know.
Yes, we do have more than
It's just-
50. We do not have 800. I would say 200, 250 is kind of the number I have in my head, depending on the year. And, Valley could be quite right that it would be a low year for attendance potentially. But the problem is we can't turn people away, right? It's a public hearing. We can't be like, oh, we're letting all these people in, but you got to go. So if for some crazy reason, or it had to be 6 feet spaced, then that 800 people probably gets a lot less. So I don't know what the number would be if that were how we figure out the number.
Okay, that's okay. I was just curious if, how that played in. But with all that said, I think I would be in favor of, doing the online sort of public hearing thing. I feel like that would be I know it's difficult for people that don't want to participate like that, but it's difficult. People don't want to show up in person either. So, it's, I think that would be personally the best way to make it accessible to everybody without going, jumping through a lot of hoops to make it something, like you said, with rooms and everything. So.
So I'll take that as we're generally comfortable with the referendum vote this year.
And we'll start communicating that
Right.
immediately and figuring out I'm assuming maybe we would still do the public hearing on May 26th, but I guess we can talk about that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I feel like there's some rules around timing with the referendum vote. It's got to be within so many days.
Okay.
I think that would probably work. But yeah, we can work all that out. And as we're communicating it, if we start hearing huge backlash from folks, then we can revisit. Okay. All right. Now that the procedural stuff is behind us. Questions, comments on the budget. So, like Becky said, so the overview piece is this yellow one. Pages 7 and 8 are kind of the summary budget pages in the pink that we have historically looked at, kind of the total budget and how it breaks down by town. I know those numbers, contribution by town this is the first time we're seeing those flow through. So anybody has any questions on that? We just had our finance committee meeting. I think we're all pretty well primed on how that works and can provide a refresher for anyone who needs it. I'll just open up questions, thoughts. Yeah, Maddie.
Not a financial question, and I know you said this is not baked yet, it's in flux, but I just would love to hear sort of very high level about that $75,000 for summer learning, and is that going to be focused on kids who are particularly struggling in this past year, or just anything you want to share about that.
Okay, I may also look to Principal Pidden, because I know they just had a meeting today, and so I think he probably could be.
Sure, so I can speak for the elementary levels, which is what we were focusing this on. And it is in flux right now. I will say to you that we had really quite elaborate plans. And as we were going down this pathway with Julian, Emily, and Lisa, and Kelly Rogers and I, we came to the realization that the capacity to pull off, so like the Cadillac of summer programming, it just doesn't exist right now. So we are scaling back some of that thinking, but we are looking at focusing this on our neediest academic students, whilst also then putting some of our sort of human resources towards ensuring a really strong start to school, where we'll be able to then pick up these students who perhaps have had more of an impact to their progress through absence of school, as opposed to sort of grasping concepts. So our focus is going to be around supporting those students who more struggle with grasping concepts, try and give them a lift, so they are more able to then benefit from the work we have back in the fall. We had been looking at some different programs that would be full a day, but we also just anticipate that families are also going to, I think everybody's got a little bit of fatigue from this whole process, so we want to make it accessible. Within our brainstorming today, we talked about continuing to offer potentially offering some of the hybrid tutoring that we did last summer that supported some families for whom transportation was a challenge, or if they had traveled, they were still able to have their child access that. There's pros and cons to that, but it would certainly be supportive, from an equity perspective also. We're looking at doing some in-person work. We had looked at an RSU 5 focus for a camp, but now we've really determined that it's probably going to be more accessible and practical to be able to deliver this from a school-based piece. So we're sort of sharing ideas, but we'll be focusing that across the 4 elementary programs. And another piece of this that we've talked about, just again in concept right now, is whether it be providing it remotely or providing transportation potentially for those who can't access it, but trying to remove any barriers to those students' families that would prevent their children from being able to benefit from it. So it's sort of a scaled down version from what we were looking at, but still focusing in on a particular sort of section of children.
That's excellent. I like everything that you just shared. Thank you.
Okay.
Is it just that the group you were discussing today happened to be the elementary teachers, or is this only for the elementary ages?
Well, in this particular piece, that was our focus. So I can't speak for the other ages. We have not traditionally done middle school. Ray has. I look around, but he just stepped out for a moment. So that's where we're at right now with the elementary piece, but not sure yet about the upper grades. For us, it's been generally harder to have those students come in and access that work, but we'll certainly be exploring it too.
And I would say at the high school, Jen, could you talk to that? And then here comes Ray, and he can speak to the middle level.
And I have some.
But the high school has had funding in their budget previously, and they didn't see the need for really, I don't think we increased it, but if we needed to, we could pull from this same bucket that we're proposing.
So we were really lucky that we actually had the support of Dr. Foley last summer, that we ran summer school in person last summer. I think we felt very strongly like those kids didn't need more time at home on their own learning. So it is an online platform that they do, but they're here and separated. Last year we were able to hire more summer school teachers. And they're here in person in a smaller group, and that's our plan to continue the same. Our push is really to get as many kids to not needing summer school, obviously. That's a big focus right now of all of our interventions. But I think that we will continue with the system that we've used, which is using our online platform of Play-Doh.
So Jen, this question is for you, but also for anyone from elementary and middle grades. Are summer school programs compulsory or voluntary?
So they're voluntary. I mean, it's a different consequence at the high school, because what they would have to then do is, if they are able to with their schedule, then they would have to include whatever they've missed in their fall schedule. So that would be on top of their classes that they're currently taking. So we really encourage them to come in the summer and get that done. But also, in the past, something we'll have to revisit this year is that we have a threshold of when they're able to come to summer school, because the reality is that is not full learning. That's not a full year course that we're able to provide in the summer. And so we've said at X grade, numeric grade and above, you're able to come. And right now, unfortunately, we have some of the kids at home, some of the fully remote kids who are at a 0% of work or grade. We've done the interventions that we can to get them involved. And so we'll have to reflect on what we do for them in the summer, because that's a very different scenario than credit recovery. That's like completing an entire course. Most likely, we'll encourage those kids to repeat that course if they have missed so much instruction. It's unfortunate that will hold them back a little bit. But also, the board was supportive last year in reducing the graduation credits, which will be a huge help in that we'll be able to get kids back on track.
So at all levels, if it is voluntary, do you have a poll in the beginning of the summer to see how you gauge interest, to see how big you need to create this program? And especially with a new program like the elementary grades, how do you guys know how many kids you'll have?
I'll let them speak for the elementary grades. For the high school, it's very, very fast, the turnaround. It will be we have a little bit of a cushion this year since we won't have the snow days. Normally, it's a matter of days when we see, because they have right up until final exams to try to pass that class. And then we quickly turn around. Years ago, when I first arrived here, it was a limit of 2 classes in the summer that you could take, and we don't do that anymore. And so we are able to base the numbers, and some come in the morning, some come in the afternoon. That supports if they have a job, and then some come for both sessions. So that is a situation where we could potentially, I hope not, but we could potentially get to the end of June and find out that we need another person or more hours. But I'm confident that we could find staffing to do that. I don't know about elementary.
I'll have Emily or Julie come up and talk about, they've been working, 3 weeks, or I don't know. They started devising their criteria and their list a few weeks ago about who's going to qualify.
Yeah, even though it'll be voluntary participation, it's going to be by invitation. Like the invitation won't go out to everybody. It'll be those most in need. And then, we literally met today, so the turnaround tends to be pretty quick. And the experience we've had before is both Durham and Moore Street have run kindergarten jump programs in the summer. And so we just, we start soliciting phone calls and be able to turn that around. One part, is just knowing what our staffing will look like. That's going to be our toughest part. Was there a particular question that I did not just address?
No, but generally, say with the Jumpstart or with the program that you have done in the past in the summer, when you do send the invitation, do people generally accept the invitation and they send their kids? Or is it really hard to gauge, even once the invitation is out, how many kids will actually show up?
Generally, people are either in or out pretty quickly. Like either people already have plans for the summer. People don't take too long to think about it. Either yes, they want this for their child, or no, we already have plans for the summer, we can't commit. Often what happens is the children who we really need and want there are the ones that end up declining often. But But we are looking at a different group now. Like, we're not looking to invite those incoming kindergarteners. We're looking for more recovery from the situation we're in.
So do you think that before we approve the budget, you will have a definite sense of whether this amount, 75, that we would be appropriating for the summer program is sufficient or too much?
I think we'd have a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
So remind me of the timeline of, not you, Julie, thank you. The timeline for us adopting the budget?
Okay. I think it's on that slide.
Is it in here? I don't think
Yes, I think it is, but I don't have the.
Oh, here we go. So the 24th, so.
Yes, the 24th.
2 weeks from today.
That's correct.
So, I mean, I'm not sure we're gonna have more information 2 weeks from today on, because I'm guessing you probably haven't made invitations, or, I don't know, will you have made invitations and heard back by 2 weeks from today?
Well, I don't know if it's the invitations, but I think we'll have a better idea of exactly what it's going to look like. Emily, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say, we did kind of back of the math today about the percentage of kids we anticipate inviting. And honestly, the limitation ultimately becomes just the hours in the summer. The model we're looking at is individual or small group. And so at a certain point, the capacity to hire people who are excited to have summer work, who know our programming, and the time they have in the day will limit the programming. And the numbers, the 75 would cover what we brainstormed today.
And is this, Becky, an expenditure that could possibly be covered by the new COVID relief bill that was voted today?
It definitely could be covered if you were wanting to reduce the tax impact, more. I mean, if we do that, the latest package that we received, and we don't know our exact amount, but with the stimulus package, we don't need to expend those funds for at least another year. I know that goes through 22 or 23.
It's a year and a half.
A year and a half. So, my thinking when I put this in there and looked at everything was I felt like it might be better to save that money, just because, we're still learning about, what exactly needs to be done for the ventilation system at Morris Street. And that's an area that we could use that money for. So that's also covered by the CARES Act. So we could definitely cover it, but then it's going to leave us less money for things that might pop up next year. So that's why I didn't do that. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to clarify.
Has the CARES Act, well, not the CARES Act anymore, the new monies, the December money and now potentially the March money, have they had the same restriction that the original CARES Act money had, which was you can't spend this on anything you had already budgeted, right? So if we had said, if we'd put $75,000 in the budget for summer school, and then they said, hey, you can use this money for summer school, but we'd already budgeted for it, we could no longer use it for that? Or have they changed that rule?
I'm going to ask Cynthia to come up and speak to that, since she's been the one that has been phenomenal at writing all of those grants and trying to stay up on the changes. The big changes from the first two. Just to remind you, we had to spend the money by December 31st, or we lost it.
Yes, that is correct. That is the big change. And, the ones we called CRF 1 and 2, those are completely off the table now. And so everything had to be either purchased or an agreement by December 30th. So now we're working with SRF 1, SRF 2, and then the SRF 3 that's coming. So would summer school, would we be able to put that in a project? I think we would, and we would get that approved. We have a lot more time to spend it. We could do this summer and next summer, for example. So that's an option.
And so I'm waiting right now. I submitted SRF 2 last week. I had to do a correction, which is really typical, and resubmitted it. So I'm waiting to see if the projects that we have are approved. But we've got another one coming right around the corner. That's going to be even more money than that's in this one. I think 3 times as much. So,
But Cynthia, part of her question was, if they put it in the budget.
Yes, you can't. Yes, thank you.
And then
you cannot, if you have it in your budget, then you cannot put it in those in the SRF. So if we put it in the SRF and you have it in the budget for this year, I could still use it next summer and not put it in the budget next year. Or if you put 75 in and we spent 100, we could use 25,000 out of that other one.
And do we have an estimate on what this third ESSER round is potentially for us? Or?
You mean the amount? Mm-hmm. It's 3 times as much as. If you give me a minute, I can go.
I think we're thinking it's about 1.2.
Or 1.5.
Yeah.
It's
between now and the end of 22.
Yeah, we have a long time to spend it. They're not those constraints that were put on by the previous administration.
Okay. Thank you for the summer learning question. Jeremy?
So it certainly sounds like we should remove that from the regular budget, the 75.
We could. Yes, Maddie.
Do you have a little wish list that you're making, Becky, of what you think we might spend that potential 1.5 million on? Or if we took the 75,000 out of the budget to use that money on this, are we hurting you in some way that you're already foreseeing?
No, I mean, I think when we built this budget, we didn't know about the stimulus packet. We still don't know. I mean, it's kind of like the unexpended fund balance. We're gonna, once it's audited, I don't mind spending it. Right now, I don't think we know for sure, or do we know for sure?
So
because I know it's things have been changing quickly. Cynthia, what
so I
do you
just
know?
wanted to say a couple of things. So the SRF 2 that I just submitted was for $587,000. If you want the exact, it's $587,254.71. They told us that to expect 3 times that amount. So my guess is about 1.5. One of the things that I should mention is that I can go in with these SRF grants. I can go in and have them open it up and make adjustments. For example, if we put a project in, because it's all project-based, if we put a project in and we either, it looks like it's going to be more, or if it's less, like $10,000 less, and then we want to move it to another project or add a project, I can do that at any point during the whole cycle of the grant. So we have some flexibility built in, and I've done that already.
And to answer Maddie's, we have not brainstormed as a team around that. I mean, the biggest unknown that I guess I'm worried about right today, which is the Moore Street ventilation, what that estimate will be. I think that Dennis, I don't know if the RFQ has gone out yet. It has. And so, we'll know more, I think, in a few. Yeah. I don't know whether it's going to be in time for this, but I could see that, a lot of that could be funded. We could pay for the ventilation with some of that. We do have some money in the budget for the ventilation. We started out thinking it would be around 100,000. The more we've met with mechanical services, with the audit and everything, I think it's probably going to be closer to 200,000. And now, of course, I'm just estimating. And so I would be comfortable if the board wanted to remove the 75,000 because of this latest package, but we don't really know how much money is there. But even if it's 1 million, you know, I think would be fine.
Laura.
Thanks, Becky and Cynthia. How long is it taking to get us those funds? I'm just wondering, you know, like lag time, if we got into summer and we didn't have the funds from the third ESSER to cover the summer program. And I think Cynthia said you could move things around in the second one, but sorry to make you get back up. But I'm just wondering if there's a chance that we wouldn't get the funds that we need for the summer program.
Well, I'm not too worried. Well, go ahead, Cynthia, too. But I will say I'm not too worried about that because we basically did that with the first two. It's kind of like we floated the money. I don't know how else to say it, but floated the money
and got reimbursed
until we received the money, and we're still. I'll look at Rick. We're still in Cynthia. We're still billing. We have not received all the money from.
We've received 1/3 of CRF 1 so far.
Yeah.
So, and we're, you know, it's a lot of work to get that together. The business office is really busy with the accounts payable person getting all of that in. There's several pieces that go with that, and it has to be certain dates, and so those lists have to be submitted and sent in, and then you get the reimbursement a few weeks later. So that is how we do it. It's just like the other grants too, right? You get reimbursed. You send the invoices in, and then they reimburse. Rick, how did I do? Okay.
Vali.
So not to load the boat here, because I think you guys have done a great job with the budget and the way that it's presented, but given the news from today, could the district-wide tech position be in the same place as the summer program in terms of funding through relief, federal relief funds?
So one of the things we're trying not to do is to fund a position that we think is ongoing. I mean, if you feel like the budget is at a place where you can't support it as a board or the community, well, then we could do that, just like we did with the guidance last year. But it's just, you're just prolonging something to the following year where we don't know what the economic impact is going to be a year from now. So that's what I would ask you to think about.
So the tech person would be a permanent position. It wouldn't be just to cover technical issues that are remote learning related or?
Oh, no. This is really because we have increased through the CARES funding the amount of machines, iPads, projectors. I could just go on, and I'm sure like Gail could expand on that. And so because of that, we really do need another tech position. And we were already in a place pre-COVID where, as I said when I presented the first time, Keith is covering three buildings, Keith, and the board meeting. And so that hasn't provided great coverage for some of our schools.
Jen.
I think that makes perfect sense about not funding positions. I'm kind of at the point where I think the summer learning is not something that's going to be flagged as frivolous spending with the year that we just had. So I'd like to leave it in there right now and possibly revisit. I mean, does that make sense? Do we have more time to revisit this? We don't vote on it for a couple weeks, right? And we're going to get some feedback between now and then. So possibly wait for some feedback. And if we feel that that's something, or we just feel like there's some, I don't know. I mean, the budget seems great to me, but if there's some feedback, we know that we have that as a possible place that we can cut. But I'm for leaving it right now and then using it kind of in the future if we need to.
Maddie.
Yeah, I agree, and I certainly wouldn't want to create a hardship for running the summer programs in a year when we need them more than ever before. So if like the getting invoices paid creates a problem, I wouldn't want to see that happen. But thanks for reminding me, Jen, that we have a couple weeks. I guess I am, like, I'm looking at, you didn't show it tonight, but the things that didn't show up in the budget. So the remote learning option and the data person, and then my favorite, the performing arts coordinator, which doesn't really fit what I'm about to say, but I'm wondering what other things in the wish list that didn't get covered could potentially be covered, and if you might want to, if you want to play the shell game and show us what, you know, some changes we could make.
You have seen everything that we brainstormed, and I think the reason that we didn't put those other positions in there really is we need time. I think it's a year out. We need time to figure out what those things would look like.
So the data, I wasn't thinking the performing arts coordinator would meet what I'm speaking about, but the remote learning option and the data person, what would that, is that data person not related to the just what we've been going through in this last year? That's something different?
The data person was just a need for, you know, could Paula Roberts use some additional help? And it's really part of the tech team. And so we felt like, let's get the additional tech person on board and let them, you know, let Gail do some brainstorming with the team and figure out how they're going to use everyone. We talked about there could also be some additional training with the, you know, building secretaries, and maybe some things could be removed. So we just felt like, you know, it's not a pressing need, but it could be something that, you know, a year down the road, you might be seeing, kind of like the bus driver custodian, where we kept saying, oh, we think we can do this and manage, and now we're to the point of, no, we really think we need an additional position. And the remote learning was around, that was a very deliberate decision that we do not want to offer a remote learning option next year. But that's something that if the data changed, that's where we would look and use that CARES money. But as it's looking right now, we feel like it's just critically important to get our students back. And I think there are some families and some students where the remote option works, but there are charter schools out there that are totally remote that they could access. We have talked about in our GC group, that Greater Sebago Alliance, that I haven't really talked about that much recently. We've talked about spending next year to kind of even research that, about should it be something that we do through multi-districts, that it's not maybe something that we want to be funding individually for students, but maybe it would be worthwhile to be doing it in that format. But we all agreed no one had the capacity to pull that off by September.
Valley.
So I just want to say that I am very supportive of the budget that you are proposing, and I thank you very much for all the hard work. I think it covers all the needs that we have that we can foresee. Obviously, there'll be some that we don't know about, but what we know needs to be covered is covered here. And it's really cognizant of the fact that the financial situation for most families isn't great coming into next year. So I think it's very responsible, but it's also a good, solid budget. So I don't really foresee wanting for myself to change much. But I do, having heard the conversation about this summer learning and the 75,000, I would like to keep it in the budget now. But when we open up the budget for a public hearing, we do hear a lot of people say you really need to work to whittle it down a little bit. Then we move that to CARES funding.
Yeah, I think I think that's a good strategy to, it's something that we could move to that CARES funding, and presumably by the time, hopefully we'll have a little more information on it. To Maddie's point about it, we don't want to disrupt the program. The mechanics and the accounting of it is different than the cash flow of it, right? So, I mean, we have funds in the bank to make sure we're paying all of our bills, and it wouldn't necessarily impede our ability to deliver it. It would just be a timing issue of when we got it back. So I don't want people to worry, about paychecks clearing, things like that.
And is contingency one backup system for something like that, that if we are not receiving the money soon enough, we can just draw it out of contingency and then replenish contingency when we do get the relief funding?
So contingency is just an expense line for things that we hadn't thought of yet, right? If we didn't, we collect that at the same rate we collect the rest of the taxes from the towns, 1/12 a month, right? So, if you guys recall, over the summer, our expenses are less because some teachers don't get paid in the summer. They choose to get 10 months of pay. Some choose to do 12. But so the expenses over those 2 months are generally less than they would be in a typical month. But we still collect 1/12 from the towns. So, so I would say, and Rick, jump up if I'm saying anything that's completely egregiously wrong. But it shouldn't be an issue. And we also have the undesignated fund balance, which is essentially that savings account. And so there are more than sufficient funds to cover those obligations. Jeremy?
I'm definitely fine keeping it in for now, but I would have trouble understanding if we confirm that we can use these funds for summer school, why we wouldn't take it out of the regular budget. Just thinking of the taxpayer, that it's a direct cost to the taxpayer that other funds are available for directly because of this very special situation. But that's more for the next couple discussions on the board. So thank you.
We can have Rick run the numbers about the impact of that for the next board meeting. Would that be helpful?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Where are we on here? Oh, new business. So just a reminder for folks, or do you have something?
Well, I would say that I'm happy to encourage the administrators that they could leave, except for the ones. I would ask that Craig and Ray and maybe the principal stay for in case you have any questions about the stipend positions.
No, Aaron and Dennis, they can leave.
And Rick.
Oh, and Rick, yeah.
And Bonnie.
He's over this way.
And Bonnie.
And Bonnie, okay. We got a couple. Okay, so just a quick reminder that next week's agenda for our meeting is, we'll have another block of time allocated for budget deliberations. So we're going to talk about it next week, and then we're going to talk about it the week after. So, but generally what we try to do is kind of lock it down next week so that with the numbers that Rick brings the following, well, I guess we've got more time because it's only April, but, it's always nice to kind of know what the numbers we're going to vote on the following week are. But we do have some more opportunities, so don't feel like you've just missed any opportunity to make a comment or questions or brilliant ideas. Okay, new business. So do we have a motion for consideration and approval of the following stipend positions pending budget approval? FHS girls and boys varsity swim team, pre-K to 8 drama musical technical director, and pre-K to 12 civil rights teams, right? More than one, right? Yes. Okay. Maddie, Maura, thank you. All right, questions? Or do you have a?
No, I don't. No, I'm happy to take questions. The stipend committee did approve all of these stipends at our last meeting. The swim team we had talked about last year, and this would allow us to have our own swim team rather than joining with area towns. The technical director is, just to help with building the sets. And I feel like we've talked about the civil rights teams a lot, so I'm happy to answer any questions, as are the administrators that are here.
And these are, just for clarification for myself and for potentially new board members, these are new available stipends. It doesn't necessarily mean we would have them, although I think all three of these are actually in the budget for next year. But voting on this just means that they are officially approved stipends for the district, right? Because they don't exist today.
That's good. And so if something happened where the budget failed, we might be pulling these out. So, they don't go into effect until the budget is passed.
So what made me think of that was the pre-K to 8 drama musical technical director. My understanding is this is for Freeport Middle School. There's no pre-K to 5, or is this just a position so that if there needed to be one at a different school, it would be under the same stipend definition? Okay.
At a future time, for a future time.
Okay. Maddie?
And it's more than just building sets in the middle school. It also helps.
Give them a better explanation than I did, and maybe Ray can add on to that.
It also creates a good pathway for, in our high school theater departments, we have, kids who are interested in the dramatic creative side and kids who are really interested in the lighting and the technical and the costume and the set building and all that stuff. And I think this would really help Jill Hooper and Freeport Middle School get kids that exposure earlier.
Thank you for that better explanation.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the 3 stipend descriptions? Okay, so we'll run through the roll call. Lindsay?
Yes.
Jen? Was your mic on?
No, sorry, I was drinking water too.
What was your vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
You literally turned your mic on and said no. Okay, so Jen Galetta is a yes. Susanna?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Maura?
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Brady?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
And Candy?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, no personnel, so we are back to the second public comment on the agenda. I don't think we have anybody in person. Doesn't look like we have anyone.
Nope, nobody online.
Nobody on the Zoom. All right. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Beth, Angela, thank you. And we'll run through the roll call one more time. Jen.
Yes.
Susanna.
Yes.
Angela. Beth.
Yes.
Maura.
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali.
Yes.
Maddie.
Yes.
Brady.
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
Candy.
Yes.
And Lindsay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you all. See you next week.